morning. Good morning. This is Biniam on the Checkin In podcast. Welcome. Glad to have you with me. Today is September the 9th. It's ninth month and the ninth day. I like watching out for those kind of synchronicities. Hello, everyone coming in. Good to see you guys. My name is Biniam. For those of you who do not know, I am on the Checkin In podcast. This is a podcast where I do three key things, typified in the three words: awareness, kindness, and happiness. We celebrate those three things in the process of our evolution as fellow human beings. Guess what episode today is? Today is a significant episode. Today is episode number 50. 50 episodes already, and we're going strong. So I'm super thrilled. I was watching number 50 coming up, and so that's a big deal. Glad to have you joining in on today's podcast. Today we are answering the question, what did you love most about your childhood home and why was that? Looking forward to diving into that question, but let me tell you a little bit about why we do this podcast. The three key things that we were trying to focus on in this podcast. Number one, the awareness piece. I want to grow more aware of me, who I am, how I see the world and operate and interact with my world. I believe the better we know ourselves, the better we're able to make the right calls and decisions in our lives. The more we know and are aware of where our framework is, the more we're able to set really healthy boundaries and navigate our relationships much better because we know what we're presenting. Number two, kindness. As human beings, I believe we are a process and change. We're a process and change whereby we're not the same person we were a week ago, let alone a year ago or 5 years ago. I think we continue to evolve and change over time. And so in that process of change, sometimes, actually most of the time, we go through some challenges. And as we go through challenges, rarely do we ever have a really kind narrative in our minds. We have more of a really critical one. And so what does it look like to be kind to ourselves? And then finally, how do we pursue our happiness in the midst of all this and processing all those uncomfortable emotions? Welcome to the 50th episode of the Checkin In podcast. Glad to have you here this morning. This is how I love to start my mornings because this is more self-care for me. This is like what self-care for me looks like as I consider these questions. Now, these questions, I just look at them the morning of. I don't prepare the whole day before. I just look at these and say, okay, where am I at in reference to the question that I'm answering today? And there's a whole bunch. You guys can do this for yourself. I just printed out a whole bunch of questions, self-reflective questions on the internet. And then I just kind of systematically go through each section every morning. Today, we're in the section of self-reflection questions about our past. Hence why our question, which is, what did you love most about your childhood home? And why was that? I love being able to go through these questions because as I do so, I grow, number one, in awareness of me. I grow in awareness as I ask these self-reflection questions. I'm reflecting and saying, where was I when I was thinking this? Why is this an important expression for me? Where do I want to head into the future? Self-reflection questions I find are a really helpful tool to be able to help us fine-tune who we are, getting more aware of why we see the world the way that we do and what goes into that. Second part about this is, as I consider these questions, sometimes they take us into areas where we may feel uncomfortable, things about our past that we're like, oh, I buried that for a reason. I do not want to experience that. My encouragement is, I think as we reflect on those challenging times in our lives that may be painful and we don't want to reflect on, perhaps part of that is because we haven't learned how to be gracious to ourselves because of those things that have happened. Maybe it was something that you did that was really, really bad or that was really unhelpful for other people. I know that's my story. Maybe some awful things were done to you and you're like, that was really unjust and I didn't want any part in that. And even in that experience, there's this piece that we may start reflecting on whereby we see ourselves in a negative light. We say, because this happened to me, I'm unlovable. Because I did this, I'm a terrible person. And then we start building up this narrative, this storyline in our minds of how bad we're doing. Yes, I'm still driving Uber. And as we do so, we start really pounding down on ourselves by way of our worth, saying, I'm not worthy of love or care. How many guests did you have on your podcast before, buddy? So this podcast, I don't have any guests on per se. This is just me doing a monologue, Roadrunner, and sharing with you my experiences and having you guys share yours. But on the other podcast, I've got 5 different podcasts. Let me just pull up my list here. There are 5 different podcasts that I am currently facilitating. I think it's on one of my scrap papers here, but 5 different podcasts. This one's the Checkin In podcast, which is my self-reflection questions that I go through for me personally and share that experience with you guys. Then there's the cast, which you're referencing, and that is the one where I bring guests on. And that one I'm bringing back again. I just have had quite a few months of a hiatus just because life gets busy, but there have been quite a few people who are lining up saying, we want to be on that. That's the one you're referring to there. And then, of course, there is my other one with my friends called Friendology. And Friendology is where I get together with a bunch of my guy friends. We talk about some fantastic topics while modeling what male friendship could look like. Then, of course, there is the Benazmer narrations, and that's where I'm reading an audiobook and sharing my voice with you guys because some of you like the calming nature of my voice. And then there is the Mum series, where I'm just taking the audio from the Mum series is audio from my memorable Uber moments videos, and I just post that in the context of a podcast. And so those are the 5 that I'm committing to. So yeah, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5. Too funny, I know, but it's a way that I want to add value to you guys as you've kind of followed my work and expressed interest. Here's some various angles that I'm investing in to make myself more available and encourage you guys along the way. So thank you for considering checking those out. Thank you for asking the question. I do value sharing me with you guys. But yeah, I was just saying about how a lot of us have really terrible stories in our mind with reference to ourselves because we hate ourselves a lot more. So what does kindness look like as we go through change? Because as we go through change, we're going to see some things that we may not be thrilled about in our own experiences, in our own contexts. But what does that look like for you to be able to say, hey, I may not be thrilled with what's going on here currently, but I can still work towards something better of where I want to go or what I want to experience or engage the world with. And that's a really important part too. So that's the second piece, the awareness first. Number 2, kindness towards yourself. And then the third piece, which is really critical and important, and that's your happiness. And how do you experience what happiness looks like as you process and work through these uncomfortable emotions that are necessary. Uncomfortable emotions are actually something really important, I think. They're there to help you your body express things that maybe aren't stellar, but it's really important to be able to learn how to express them appropriately. I'll let you know when my friend Mike's podcast is done, and my mom wants to be there here too, buddy. That's amazing. Well, I would love to have her along as well. Hello, Densurian, and she says, how do I break a negative thought that keeps recurring? Great question. How do you break a negative thought that keeps on going? One, if you try to do it on your own, it might be a lot more challenging. So I'd be saying, who are the people in your life that you trust? Who are the people in your life, my friend, who you would say you feel safe sharing this stuff that is on the inside, which is really vulnerable? That's a vulnerable share right there, for example. And I want to applaud you for that because that's a really difficult thing to do, especially when you don't know someone very well. It's a risk to say, here's what's going on internally. And I feel vulnerable when I'm sharing that. You want to share in safe places. Does that make sense? She's coming back at the end of September. That's your mom? Awesome, man. That'd be amazing. You want to share these things that are going on in here that you don't necessarily want the world to know with safe people. And I suggest sharing it in safe community because they're the ones that are going to be your support system. I think we all could use a bit of support. Not one of us is made to be a lone ranger. We're made to be in community, to grow together, to encourage one another, to be able to just check up on each other this way. And so I would suggest, who are the safe people that you can say, hey, here's where my mind keeps on telling me this negative story or thought, and I'm struggling with this because I want to believe it. Could you give me some encouragement? Could you let me know if this is true or how I can change if it is true? Could you give me some insight from your perspective of how I can move to the next best stage in reference to this? Does that make sense, my friend? And then it also involves displacing away with other thoughts. But if it's a negative thought that keeps on recurring, consider what it is, write it down, and see, is there any merit to this thought? Maybe it's a negative thought that says, I'm such a mean person. That's an observation. But then our mind goes to the next conclusion. Therefore, I must be worth less. That's a value statement. Do you see that? There's an observation that says, hey, I'm always really mean and snappy when people talk to me. That's an observation, which is really helpful. That's a negative observation because you don't want to stay there. You want to work on that. So write that down. Say, I'm a mean person and I snap at people when they talk to me. And you don't want to do that, right? But then watch how your mind continues that negative observation to a negative value statement where it says something like, oh man, I must be a really terrible person. No one wants to talk to me. Now that's a value statement there. And that's the unfortunate value statement that speaks to your worth or to your identity. And that's the unhelpful part there. So you want to look at those two components, the observation and then also the feelings that come from it of how you feel about yourself, which is negative. And you want to especially hone in on the feelings part and say, actually, this is not true because I am an amazing specimen of humanity. It's not all bad here. There's some good parts. And then you can start brainstorming from that feelings, this second part there that says I'm worthless and say, but am I really worthless? Who is there in my life that really appreciates me for who I am and what I do? There's my family. My mom and dad really appreciate me. They celebrate me. Or my friends. There's some close friends that I have, and they really have expressed gratitude in the past because I was there for them when they needed. So you start discounting the feelings component that's negative and saying, no, there's some good things here. Get your friends to help you on this one here too. And on the first part, which is more the observation, you can say, hey, I know I struggle with this. Could you please help me? Follow me on Instagram, buddy, please and thank you. Roadrunner, I would love to send me a message requesting that, and I'll be happy because I'll forget after this year. But if it's in my messages, I'll definitely be happy to follow you, okay? I'd be happy to. So that's what I would suggest is look at the observation and say, okay, if this is true, what does it look like for me now to be able to move to the next level of growing as an individual? How can I grow as an individual in this one here, whereby I'm able now to acknowledge that I may have an anger problem because I snap at people, and then start practicing some things along the way that enable me to get to the next best version of myself. So those are the couple of things I'd be thinking. Let me blow my nose, just a quick sec here. Excuse me. I like on here that I'm able to be me. I don't have to worry about people are going to think I'm terrible of me. No, I don't even think about that. I can give you my full self, even all the parts where I'm like, hey, I need to fix my hair or I need to blow my nose or that kind of thing. That's what I like to be able to do in context of community. So that's what I would suggest, my dear friend. That's a great question. Thank you for sharing it. I think it helped others as they were hearing my response to that too. So that's why I love this interactive nature of doing what I do here. The question we're answering today, however, is what did you love most about your childhood home, and why was that? I remember my childhood home was in a really small town called 100 Mile House, which is in British Columbia, Canada. Really tiny place there. I can still picture the house. It was red and white at the time. I think they may have painted it over by now. It was a very simple family home. Hey, I've not been on your life for so long. Welcome back, GT. Abium God. I totally remember you, my friend. Nice to see you back again. So I remember my childhood home very distinctly. It was red and white. We had a single lane parking spot. There was no garage. And we had a hedge around the front yard, and you could run around the side of the house to the backyard. And the backyard, it had a fence that was half finished, so it just had like the thanks for the gifts, by the way, friends. I really appreciate that. It had a half finished fence, so you could still see through and jump through the fence, but we never had enough money to finish fixing the fence. This is a 2-story home. And I remember when we first moved there, I thought we were the richest people ever because we lived in such a low economic place in society that when we had something fairly basic, I was like, holy crap, this is like so high class. And so having 2 floors, amazing. My brothers and I shared a bedroom together. But I think what I loved about this home is that this home, I've never reflected on this here, but this is actually kind of meaningful for me as I remember these experiences. My childhood home, the reason why I loved it the most was because it gave me space to be creative. And I didn't realize that was what I had back then. I'm a very creative person. I think in creative terms. I'm musical. I play the trumpet, which is over my room over next door. I express myself creatively. I like thinking about creative ideas, creative analogies. I like thinking, how can I make this memorable? How can I make this so that it kind of carries the point across? And so that home for me facilitated a lot of my creative beginnings. What I mean by that is it gave me space. There was actually space in this home to be able to do a lot of things. Let me share with you some of those creative ways that me and my siblings played together, and I did as well myself. It was the basement that was like our lair. So the basement had our bedroom. So you came down the stairs. One of the things that we love to do, let me start off at the stairs, okay? I'm going to walk you through the house here, okay? I'm going to walk you through the house so you can picture this with me. So the stairs were on the far side of the house. So if you're facing the house, it was on the right side, and you would walk down the stairs, and then you walk into the basement. It was this long hallway. First was our room on the one side, and then you walk into the main area of the basement, which is it was kind of an interesting place. But before I get there, I'm going to tell you about the stairs. The stairs were amazing because me and my siblings, what we'd love to do, we'd love to jump stairs and see how many stairs we could leave down. And we want to see how many we could take in at a time. So we do 5, 6 stairs at a time, right? And one of the things we do is we jump down the stairs. Well, before we jump down the stairs, what we would do is we would first and foremost, we would hold the handrails. And in holding the handrails, we would reach as far forward as we could and then lock our hands on the handrails. And then we would let our feet catch up and then jump ahead. And we try to jump the whole length of the stairs down to the bottom. And down at the bottom, there's fantastic carpets, like plush carpets that carried on till the cement portion of the basement. So it was fairly safe, soft landing. So we loved doing this. And it was one of those things that we wanted to accomplish as young boys, right? Is to say, how much can we do? And so that was a lot of fun. Jumping down the stairs. That was a lot of fun. That was one of the forms of entertainment that would keep us engaged for hours. Yeah, so that's what we enjoyed then. And then testing 1, 2. For some reason, I seem to have lost my audio. Testing, testing. Let me just make sure everything is connected here. Or is it my headset? Testing. I think I'm still coming in. Am I coming in, guys? Your YouTube is messed up. Oh, okay. Thanks for the heads up, Ollie. I don't know why. That's bizarre. Anyway, I'll keep on going, and we'll check the live stream later. If it's out of whack, then I'll tend to it. It crashed. I'm so sorry, Ollie. Oh man, mine still seems to be going, and it's not saying there's any issues. But if it is, then I will definitely upload the live stream from the Instagram. So thanks for the heads up, Ollie, and I'm glad you can still connect here. Hello, Samuel. So I loved jumping down the stairs in my childhood home. Down at the bottom, the carpet was like plush. It was old. It was red kind of carpet, but it was really like soft. And so we loved that component. And so what we loved in that component as we would jump down the stairs there is we would, oh yeah, we were inspired to play pirates. Oh, it's all good now. Awesome, Ollie. Thank you for letting me know. We would play pirates in the following way. We would save these boxes, these big boxes that we could fit inside. We'd sit inside the boxes. We'd use baseball bats as our oars, and we would basically row our way in these boxes on the carpet around each other. And it's kind of like we would pretend we're ships and we're pirates. And so that's another extension of what we would do in my childhood home. We'd sit in these boxes, we'd row around and pretend we're pirates and sort of have like little battles against each other. It was so much fun. So much fun. So thoroughly enjoyed those memories. And that's how we played. Like we didn't have money to buy things. And so we'd make do with what we had. And that's what we did. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this childhood home and how it drew out that creative elements. But that's another way we'd play. And then in the basement portion where it was all cement, it was kind of an interesting spot back there. The previous owners, what they'd done is they'd taken these glass jars with, the tin tops, and they would drill holes in the tin tops and drill it to the roof, to the ceiling. And then what you do is you take the glass jar and just kind of put it on the lid. And it would just be like it would look like a whole bunch of these lights, but they were just glass jars. And I guess they would stick things in them at one time. So I thought that was interesting. But they had a workbench there. We didn't have tools, of course, because we just couldn't afford that kind of thing. But what I would do, because I couldn't afford going and buying like toy cars or different simple toys, I would make my own. And I liked cop cars at the time. I thought they were pretty fantastic with all the lights and that kind of thing. So what I would do is I would take these cardboard boxes, and I'd start cutting out frames for a cop car, and I'd try to make a police car model out of cardboard. I'd glue the pieces together as well as I could. I would have all the dimensions as best as I could. And that's what I did to try and make a model of a police car so I could play with it. True story. That's how I played when I was a kid. And that's what made sense to me. Something else that was meaningful about this childhood home, there's just so many memories there. This childhood home was right beside the elementary school that I went to. So there's a street in front, of course. There's our house, and there's the alley behind. And then on the other side of the alley was the school fence. And then right across was the little gate there that you could walk into the school. So one of the things I didn't enjoy was how close my house was to the school, because that meant that I was obligated every day. Mom would expect me to come home for lunch during the lunch break. And I didn't like that. Yo, how are you, man? Good to see you. Why I didn't like this is because whereas all my friends at school would stay in class to eat lunch, I felt like I was missing out. There's that FOMO that I had. I felt I was missing out, hanging out with my friends, eating lunch in the class, because I had to go home, eat lunch at home, and then go back to the school. And I felt like I was missing out. I felt it's made me feel like I was an outsider, if you will, right? That's one thing I didn't appreciate about my home being so close to the school, but it was amazing when I got to go and play in the playground because it's just next door, right? So we'd go out the backyard, through the half-finished fence, along the alley, and through the gate and into the school compound. And I loved how accessible that was. And right as you walked into the school compound through that gate, there was a sandbox, like a sandbox that it wasn't like an official sandbox. It was just like a dirt mound that the kids love to play and dig around in. And so all my neighborhood friends would be there playing with their toys. And we had like these various toys, like from your toy cars to these wrestling figures and some action figure heroes as well. And I'd look and salivate over these toys because these are toys I couldn't afford. These were things that were beyond our family's means to get. So what would I do so I could play alongside them? We couldn't afford to buy these toys. So I made them for myself. I would take a scrap piece of paper. I would draw as best as I can an action figure. I would color it really well. Then I would cut out the outline of this action figure that I'd drawn on there. I would take my paper action figure to the playground, and then I would try playing with my friends. And of course, they would make fun of you because you just couldn't afford real toys. But I just wanted to play with them, right? And so I just make do with what I could. And as I took these paper figure cutouts that I had to the playground, I'd play until they ripped. And then I'd have to go and do it all over again. And so that's what I did, just to make it work, right? We just accepted our circumstances, that this is where we're at. How we can extend ourselves or not. And here's what we do to make things work. Something else to note about, by way of a happy memory with my childhood home, and how it brought out more creativity in our yard in the winter when it was snowing. The pathway from the back door to the gates, my dad would go out of his way and try to create a skating rink. It's just a really skinny pathway there, right? But my dad would try work on creating ice there so that we could practice skating. And for him, it was more about, hey, this is an experience that you can grow in. And so we'd love skating on this bumpy ice that my dad tried to prepare for us, this pathway. And in the back, we were terrible skaters, but we tried the best that we could. And we'd skate back and forth on that pathway. It was just, again, really simple. Most people will say, no, I need a skating rink. But for us, we were just really content with something so simple as that. And I'm so grateful for my dad. I'm gonna call my dad and express appreciation for the way he tried to make things work for us. Yeah, so we had that skating pathway really from the back door to the gate of the of our fence. And then also our neighbors would, like, fence, our half finished fence piled up beside their parking spots. So our neighbor would push all the snow onto our yard through the half finished fence, of course, because there's no like slabs that were blocking the way. And what I'd enjoy doing, me and my brothers, was we would go and dig ice holes, like in the mounds of snow. We would make like ice caves, and then we'd hang out in there. I think that was a lot of fun while we shivered and were cold, and our snowsuits were melting the snow inside there. But that's what we did for fun again. That was what made it home for us. I remember one time I used to be in this, it's kind of like Boy Scouts, but it's like Army for kids called cadets. I was in Army cadets. And at the end of every year, we would have what we call a survival weekend. And that's where we took all of our learning that year and try to bring it to application. We'd go into the wild and they would give us one small animal to kill, clean, cook, and then eat for 2.5 days. We all sucked at this, mind you. Our first year, we were given chickens. Our second year, we were given bunnies, and the girls just went hungry because they were like, I can't kill this cute bunny. But the first year was chickens, and yeah, that was a very memorable time. Holy crap. I'm not going to go into that story because that's for another time. But at the end of the exercise, when we finally got back home, starving because we all kind of sucked at doing this job, we got back and they still had extra chickens. So they said, who wants to take some extra chickens home for your families? And I was like, yeah, I'll take one. So here's me walking back from the high school where we were dropped off with this chicken on a string, leading it back to my place. My brother's like, man, mama's going to be upset about this. She's not going to be happy. I'm like, oh, it'll be all right. We get home. Sure enough, mom was not impressed. She was really upset. She's like, why did you bring this thing home? We don't need this thing here at home. But it was already done. I brought it home. So Dad said, don't worry, we'll butcher it tomorrow. And so mom was like, well, where are we going to keep it for the night? So we opted to keep it in our only bathroom for the night. The bathroom was clean before we put it in there. By morning, when we came back to the bathroom, oh my goodness. When we came back to the bathroom in the morning, the chicken had pooped all over the place, from the floor to the sink to the like there's poop everywhere, and it was a terrible mess. My mom was really not impressed, right? Because she's the one who's gonna have to clean up this whole mess. It was then that I saw my dad kill the chicken in the most clever fashion ever. I've never seen this done before. Whereas me and my friends out in the bush were trying to do this dangerous maneuver. We had a chopping block, and so we tried to hack the chicken's head off, and it was just a big mess, and it was just, oh, terrible. What my dad, however, did was he took the chicken, he put the base of he went and grabbed the base of the wings and put them in between these two fingers right here. So the base of the wings is right here. And then he took the head and put it back between here. So he had like the base of the chicken's wings all in his hand and the head. And then he basically took a knife, a serrated knife, and I probably shouldn't be describing this all for you, but he basically, cut the chicken's head. And because what happens if you don't know this, chickens, when they have the heads cut off, will do the funky chicken dance. They'll just kind of go crazy all over. It's just a mess with blood spraying everywhere. But because he had the wings and the head all in one grip, it couldn't do that. Once he cut its neck, he put the box over. He had a box, and he put the box over, and he just sat down on top of the box. So the chicken's messiness was contained all underneath the box. It was just one of those like, huh, that's one way to do it. So I apologize. I probably should have warned some of you that I was going to describe something graphic there. But nonetheless, that's what he did. And it was one of the cleverest ways. I brought the chicken home because I remember our days in Africa when Mom would cook fresh chicken, and she had these amazing spices. It was so delicious, and I was looking forward to that. This chicken was a real disappointment because Mom did not have all those spices, and so it was really difficult. Bro is looking to come to Canada. Can you help me with some info? I don't know very much info, my dear friend Mikias, but send me a private message and I'll try to respond when I get a chance. I don't have a lot of connections by way of awareness of what you need to do, so I might be the wrong person to ask, but as best as I can, I'll see if I can find some resources to send your way. But send me a private message if you would. So those are some of my memories as a kid in my childhood home. And why did I appreciate my childhood home is because all these experiences that I shared with you, for me, brought out this element of creativity that I've come to really value in my life currently. I feel like I'm still in the zone of creatively living and engaging and seeing the world. And so that's what really makes it worthwhile for me. What, however, were some of your experiences in your childhood home that were really good? I know for some of you, it may have been something, more challenging. The question today was more about what did you love the most? My childhood home also had some really difficult experiences for sure. But there's a balance there, isn't there? I'm being asked here, how do you reach your maximum potential? Can I suggest it has to do with the three things that we deal with on this podcast, Samuel? To reach your maximum potential, follow these three in the sequence that I described. Number one, awareness. Know yourself really well. You can't reach your maximum potential unless you know what you do really well in the first place. What is it that makes you you? To reach your maximum potential, you need to know yourself well enough to say, I'm really amazing at this. The awareness piece is really important. Second, as you are growing in whatever it is that you're learning about yourself and saying, this is what I really value, what does it look like to be kind to yourself, Samuel? To be kind to yourself in that process of change, saying, hey, I'm a really good person. I do some things really well. There's some things that I value along the way here. And I'm a change in progress. And as I do this here, as I practice this, I'm going to give myself grace and patience. I'm going to say, hey, I maybe didn't knock it out of the park this time, but I'm going to keep on trying. I'm going to keep on doing the best that I can. And then thirdly, your happiness. Pursue your happiness by processing all the difficult stuff that is underneath the radar. This is my best way that I would say to reach your maximum potential. That's a great question. Would you come back again, Samuel, and ask me that question again in future episodes? Because I'd like to give more space and time to that, but I'd love to be able to encourage you along the way that way. Colin says, what are your thoughts on changing mindset in general, like becoming more confident, risk-taking, and not caring what others think? If that makes sense. Absolutely. I would say this is a worthwhile endeavor, Colin. It's actually really important to be able to do that in our context. I'm just knocking things all over here. So I would say hell yes to that, Colin. Tigrinya, I don't speak Tigrinya. It's a worthwhile endeavor. I hope you will come and join me again, Colin, on future episodes. I would love to give more attention and time to that because it's worthwhile. That's why I do this podcast. But I think it's possible to change your mindset, to be able to take back into control where your trajectory is heading in the future. I'd love to partner with you on that. Episode 50, you guys, amazing. Hope to see you guys again tomorrow. Thank you for being on this episode. Have a great Thursday. Bye for now.